Qualitative data analysis. I'm Dr. Mary Cecil. Qualitative modes of data analysis provide ways of examining and interpreting meaningful patterns or themes. And qualitative data analysis is not standardized. There are no uniform procedures for qualitative data analysis. That is the nature of qualitative analysis. This may cause qualitative data analysis to be criticized for its lack of standardization, or it can cause it to be recognized for its strength and its uniqueness. Your process for data analysis and qualitative data analysis is to assemble your data. And know that you may have collected data to answer your research question from many different sources. For example, you may have interview transcripts, you may have focus group transcripts, you may have observations, documents, web data, archival data. Consider your research question. What patterns emerge in regard to your research question? What themes emerge in regard to your research question? What words, what phrases? Are there any deviations from particular themes and patterns? How can you explain these deviations? What interesting stories emerge from your responses? How do you look for themes, patterns, deviations, and stories? There are lots of ways. I'm going to get you started with some particular ways. Word repetition. Take a look at this excerpt from interviews. I'm going to use interviews in my examples. These techniques work just as well in documents, archival records, focus groups, observations. I'm just using interview transcripts for these examples. So this interview, the interviewer says, "What are your concerns with cloud computing?" And the interviewee says, "Well, not many. Really, I just can't see it. I don't trust who has my data. Is it really secure? I wish I had more control over it. I guess security is the main concern I have. We researched the organization and I trust them. We looked at the security of the organization. I feel confident. It's just the security of the whole idea." Word repetition is looking at word frequencies, and it can be done by generating a list of the unique words in a text and counting the number of times each word occurs. You can do this with software or a word processor or a database. It can create a word frequency list, and it's a quick and easy way to look for themes. So as an example, in this case, look at the word security or forms of the word secure or security. Security has occurred 4 times, so that's a theme or a pattern that's reoccurring. Trust has occurred multiple times as well. So trust and security is a theme that you could evaluate and examine in your qualitative data analysis. Here's another technique, indigenous categories. And these are terms that may sound unfamiliar or a term that you've heard of, but it's used in an unfamiliar way. The interviewer again is asking, "What are your concerns with cloud computing?" And the interviewee says, "Well, not many really, just I can't really see it. I'm concerned with cloudware falling apart. What if the vertical cloud is suspended? I mean, if my cloudware bends, I can't do anything and my whole company goes down." This is ways to examine what sounds unfamiliar to you or is used in an unfamiliar way. Well, just the term cloud, we know, is being used in an unfamiliar way, but in particular, cloudware. What are they meaning by cloudware? And what does falling apart mean? What does vertical cloud mean? This is another way to examine what the interviewee is saying. What do they mean by suspended? And what does a bend mean and goes down? Is falling apart, a bend, and goes down all meaning the same thing? They've used the term cloudware 2 times. Do they mean software in the cloud, or what does the terminology mean? Here's some analysis that you can do, some qualitative analysis based upon these terms that sound unfamiliar, or they're using them in a way that doesn't really sound familiar to you. So this is called indigenous categories. Keywords in context. This is when you want to really understand a concept, but you need to look at how it's used to thoroughly understand it. The interviewer, again, same question. Interviewee says, well, not many really, I just can't see it. You know, we have this policy and it feeds all of the data. Well, just reading that part, this policy, knowing that we're talking about computing, a policy could be something like a network group policy in Windows. So if you just read that much, you could be thinking about a Windows 10 network group policy. But if you read the transcript a bit more, we wrote it last year and the documentation really helps. When you see it in context, you'll better understand they're probably talking about a written policy. So you have to read the context to thoroughly understand what it means. So understanding a concept to look at how it's used. This is another form of data analysis. It's to understand a concept, look at how it's used. Another technique of qualitative data analysis. Compare and contrast. This is understanding what is this all about and how does it differ from preceding or following statements. How does it differ from the statement before it or the statement after it? You as the researcher, you read each line or each sentence in a transcript, or each line or each sentence in a set of data, and ask yourself, what is this about? How does it differ from other statements or other data or other lines? It's a kind of detailed work to help keep you focused on the data. So in this context, the interviewee says, you know, I don't trust who has my data. Is it really secure? I wish I had more control over it. So these three sentences are actually three different pieces of information. The first is about trusting who has the data. The second one is about security. And the third is about control. If you read through these rather quickly, you might breeze through them and get to the fourth sentence talking about security. But if you stop and look at each individual statement, they are really about three different things. You know, I don't trust who has my data. Trust. Is it really secure? Security. I wish I had more control. Control. So as you analyze this data, you can pull out three different themes: trust, security, and control. What is this all about? It's a way of detailed work, keeping the researcher focused on the data. Social science queries is searching the interviews for social science information, meaning social conflict, cultural contradictions, social control, things that people do in managing personal social relationships, methods by which people acquire and maintain described status, information about how people solve problems. So, what are your concerns with cloud computing? The interviewee says, well, not many really. I just can't see it. You know, I don't trust who has my data. Those people are hard to get along with. So, both of these statements go back to trust. They go back to social conflict, social control, interpersonal relationships. Searching for missing information. It's about what's not there versus what is there. Perhaps you have been looking at a great deal of data and you continually find that cloud computing is very much about security, securing the data in the cloud. And then you come to this one particular interview. What are your concerns with cloud computing? I don't trust who has my data. I wish I had more control. We research the organization and I trust them. You notice one particular thing is missing. They don't mention security. So this is a deviation. It's a scrutiny-based approach that you find that there is something atypical here. There is no mention of security. So this is a deviation from the norm. This is a story that you could pull out. You find that there is a deviation here. Is there some way you could explain this deviation from the norm? And you can look for metaphors, similes, and analogies. This is a way that people often represent their thoughts and behaviors and experience with analogies. Back to our previous interview about the cloudware falling apart and the vertical cloud being suspended, or the cloudware events. What does falling apart mean? So there's some type of metaphor, simile, analogy in this paragraph. What do these mean? What is the interview trying to say to us? You can analyze this further through your qualitative analysis to try to find out what this interviewee is trying to really convey to us. You can also try to map emotions. What does the data, the observation, or the interview show in terms of what people are experiencing and feeling? Perhaps the person says they are scared or they are nervous. You can map these emotions and explain that and share that in your research. In this particular interview, the interview is saying, it makes me scared that everyone is relying on me. What if something goes wrong? I'm nervous that I made that decision. And there are many more techniques that you can research as the researcher to map themes, to map patterns, to look for deviations, to look for stories. But these are a few to get you started. And then you're looking for how these patterns and themes, or lack thereof, help to illuminate your research question. Always go back to that research question. How do the stories that you find help illuminate the research question? After you have evaluated your data and looked for an illumination of your research question, then look to data reduction, data display, and conclusion drawing. Data reduction. It forces choices about your data. What part of all of that data should be emphasized? Remember that it's not easy, and beginners often fail to understand that even at this stage, the data does not speak for itself. A common mistake that researchers make is to be perfectly objective and to just show every bit of the data in an effort to be completely objective. And a large volume of unassimilated data and uncategorized data is not appropriate for the readers to consume. So your results section of your paper should be a reduced set of data worthy of being emphasized. Let me say that again. In your results section of your research paper, that should be a reduced set of data worthy of being emphasized. If you need more data to be shown, place it in an appendix if you want. Now, data display goes a step beyond data reduction to provide an organized, compressed assembly of information that permits conclusion drawing. You can display your data as a piece of text, a piece of narration. You can quote some important data. You can quote a story that you found. You can show a diagram, a chart, a flow chart, a matrix, some new way of arranging or thinking about the data. Now, the discussion part of the data, the discussion part of your paper, is where you draw conclusions. The discussion section of your paper is the conclusion drawing. This is the activity of the third element of qualitative analysis. Conclusion drawing involves stepping back to consider, what does the analyzed data mean? What's the implication of your research question? And verify that data. Revisit the data as much times as necessary to cross-check and verify your conclusion. Make sure that your data is valid and your conclusions are valid based upon the results of your data. Remember, qualitative data has no standard method of analysis. That's the nature, that's the strength of qualitative analysis. Remember that the data goes into your results section and your analysis goes into the discussion section of your paper.